if we could just convince people that education is the key to fixing all these other problems, that we may have a chance. So as every child in America has access to a good school, as they're educated, we're going to now start fixing things like our economy, which we all care so much about, because we know that employers are looking for educated people to hire. We know that those who are educated can actually secure good jobs and make good money. And now they're not dependent on the government or welfare services. They're not on food stamps. Their anxiety and depression go down significantly. So we know that if you increase education in our country, that you're going to make this a more prosperous country in the land that we all believe in, that can be the greatest country in the world, where every single child, regardless of where they come from, who they are, what their race is, has access to the American dream, a life of prosperity and freedom. That's ultimately what we believe in, and we think that can happen through education reform.
Welcome back to another episode here on the Hart Hustle Podcast. You know, we always throw the phrase, every child deserves a great education around all the time. But today, you're actually about to meet someone who's actually doing something about it. Our guy Norton and the team at ACE Scholarships have been flipping the script for families across the country. And honestly, it's bigger than you actually think. So Norton, how you doing today, man?
Hey, doing great. What a pleasure to be on your show. Sure appreciate it. Love this topic, education reform in America.
Yes, sir. Before we actually get into the ACEs story, what's one moment where you saw a child's life completely change because of the access to education? And your thought, yeah, this is why we fight for this every day.
Oh, we get so many stories. You know, we've been fortunate. We've given over 100,000 scholarships in our 25-year history. And this is a really special year for ACE because we're celebrating a quarter century. In fact, this coming week, we have a big event in Denver with 1,600 people. We're recognizing our founding fathers who envisioned a better Denver. So we have a lot of stories in ACE, and it's hard to pick just one. But if I could say right off the bat, one kid who means a whole lot to me, it would be a kid named Richard Vidal. And he was a guest speaker at our luncheon many years ago. And his story was not too dissimilar from a lot of our kids. He came from a very poor family. He had parents who cared deeply about him, but they were stuck in a zip code where their public school was not performing well. And his parents were envisioning a greater future for their son, Richard, and his brother, but they couldn't afford to put him in a private school. And so they applied for a scholarship, and Richard received one. He tells a story that his life changed completely overnight the day he got that scholarship. He went from being in a school that was pretty easy for him, and then he went to a school that was incredibly challenging overnight. And he said, though, the patience and the perseverance of that school and my teachers, they cared for me, they came along my side, and they did whatever it took. And he said there was no reason why they should, but after a couple of years, I finally caught a great level. And I recognized something. I was really, really good at math. And then he graduated with honors, went to Colorado School of Mines, which is one of the best engineering schools in America. And then I'll never forget when he shared that story that he was graduating from School of Mines and that he had 4 job offers from big oil and gas companies, from Goldman Sachs, and it really ran the gamut. So this guy's life was absolutely changed because his parents sacrificed and because we came along his side and got him access to a great school. And that's the power of ACE, is we help out kids so they can really fulfill their dreams.
Talking about living in purpose, right? Allowing someone to tell you that story. That's what we do it for when we hear those stories. And not every time will someone come back and say thank you or tell you their story. But for him to come back and tell you that story, I can only imagine that moment you felt like, man, I'm so happy that I was just a small part of it, right? Because as a leader, you're doing all the behind the scenes work. And there might be others that they come across, at the front line, but you still are part of it. You know, you're truly in the trenches. People really talk about fixing education, but you're living this. Like, what are some of the other challenges you faced early on getting into this role and making sure that others are provided that opportunity?
You know, I think the greatest challenge that we face is that we know there are thousands of children who today are being left behind, parents who want their kids to be in a good education environment. And we know in our country right now that most people are dissatisfied with their school options in their zip code. And so they're trapped. They have no way out. And so as long as there are parents out there that are dissatisfied and their kids not being educated, and we know they're not. When we look at studies around the country, we're seeing that only 31% of fourth graders can actually read at proficiency levels, and only 28% of eighth graders can do math at proficiency levels. So we know we're letting our kids behind, and that's really what we like to say to people, is that there's nothing controversial about education reform and school choice. There's nothing wrong with letting parents choose the school that's good for them. And here's the deal, when you empower them, great things happen. That's what's so beautiful about America, is that in this country is we have the ability to make choices, from the home we buy, to the car we purchase, to the clothing that we put on our bodies. America's a great country, but in education, all too often, it's a one shop or one size fits all model. And that is the school in your zip code is the only place you can go. So, man, I lament over the fact that too many kids are being left behind, and we're not doing what we need to make our country the greatest country in the world for education.
Funny that you say that. I was actually one of those kids that was bussed out because of the high school that he was zoned for. Right. My mom kind of knew the community that we were in wasn't the best community. She knew that the school at that moment just wasn't at its best where it's at now. So she said, hey, I don't know that I want to continue sending you there. So she bussed me out to somewhere else, where I was kind of really upset, to be quite frank. Right. Like, my friends were at that high school, but I left there and loved that school. And now I'm back at that school, actually on their board, on their foundation, and giving back in that sense. Sometimes we don't even realize it, so going back to that gentleman that it changed his life, to me, that school changed my life. The way that I would think, the people that I would come across. I mean, now that I'm back at that school, really making the difference, because that's really where it all starts, is that you went through it yourself. And that's where you see there was a need. Did you actually go through this yourself? Like, a lot of the times when people go back and to give to a mission, it's because it tugged at their heart. Why did you get into ACE scholarships?
Well, the first thing, based on what you just said, I couldn't agree more. I mean, often what happens, we think in terms of the kids who we give scholarships to, and we think they understand what's going on. Not always. It's really the parent who understands, like your parents who sacrificed for you, and they said, we're going to bus you to a school because we know you have potential, and we think the school can enable you to be better. Mm-hmm. That's really what happens. Our parents are heroic. And then over time, as you know, the kids start to understand what this great gift is in their lives from those who sacrifice to financially support them. And look at you, you've got a great podcast now. You've got a great life as a coach. And you probably know that your life would be very different if you didn't go to a great school where you were challenged. For me personally, my story is very personal, and I didn't know how personal this was until 2 years into my job working at ACE. Mm-hmm. I took this job because I really liked the mission a whole lot. I love what we were doing. But 2 years in, we found out that our oldest son, was diagnosed with autism. And the doctors told us that we needed to do speech therapy, occupational therapy. And we had to spend thousands of dollars to help our son out. And honestly, my wife and I, we were young. We didn't have the resources to give our son what he needed, but we knew that we would sacrifice and do all we could. And we were lucky because my mom and dad came along our side, and they said, hey, listen, we want to clear the way so that our grandson, Jack, can have a great life. And they invested. And what we saw through those investments is that miraculously, our son started doing things he couldn't before. He could look you in the eye. He could actually put a sentence together. He started to actually dribble a ball, and he could actually throw a baseball, things he couldn't do before. And so we started to have hope, recognizing that maybe our son could be normal. And our son's doing incredible things now. He's in college. He's a computer science major. But what I know is that if our son didn't have the resources to get the help he needed, he would be in a very difficult place today than he is currently. And that's because someone helped us out. So I had this aha moment. And that was that every day when I go to work, I'm doing the exact same thing. The money that we raise, the work we do, is empowering a parent who's desperate so their kid can have a better life. So I love the work we do because it works.
Love it. Yeah. No, that's definitely a good feeling to know that you're helping others like your child, right? That may not have the opportunity. But we know that while you're telling me the wins now and all the success that's really kind of been going on for the years, scholarships, awards, lives change. But can we kind of go back to those tough moments of ACE? A time you thought, man, are we even going to make it? How did you kind of push through those moments? Because we all have that roller coaster moment in our lives, in our careers, and in what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Well, you would think at everyone in America that they love school choice and that there would be nothing controversial about the work we do. And that's not really the case. There are some people who think that we should put all money into a public school system. We're agnostic. We frankly don't care. We just want to make sure parents have choice and that they have choices for good schools, whether it be a public school, a private school, if they choose to homeschool their kid. And I go back to the early years when I started 23 years ago, and we were heavily criticized by a lot of people in the state legislature in Colorado as we were trying to pass a voucher bill that would enable all poor families to go to great schools. And the criticism was really significant. They called us bad names. They said we're anti-public schools. They said we didn't care about our children. And that was a really tough time because we had to check our character at the door when people were questioning who we were, recognizing we're good people, we're doing this for the right reason, and we really believe that the work we're doing is going to lay a foundation for a brighter future. And I look back on those early days, and I see how we've now grown from one state to 12 states, how we've gone from a few hundred kids to this year 25,000 kids on scholarship, to stories like Richard Vidal that I shared earlier, to our luncheon this week where we're going to have remarkable families who will be there speaking and sharing their stories. So anytime you go through adversity in your life, you got to recognize that you're laying a foundation for something so much greater. And I would say that's the ACE way. In our values, we talk about being adaptable, being innovative. And we do those things all the time. We're always pushing the limits and thinking, what can we do to be better as an organization? And what can we do ultimately to serve more kids so we can fulfill our vision that every child in America has access to a quality education?
This is so good. And if everything works, let's say everything you're fighting for works, if the mission hits full throttle, what does the future of education actually look like in America, let's say in the next 10 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a lot of issues that we face in our country go away. So it's interesting. We focus on education every day. We wake up, we live it, we breathe it. It is our number one issue. And I think we assume all too often that every American, that they feel the same way that we do. But we actually hired a polling company recently and found out that education was number 6 on the most important issues that Americans face every day, behind the economy and healthcare and crime and border security, things of that nature. And so at first we were a little disappointed, but then we started looking at this and saying, if we could just convince people that education is the key to fixing all these other problems, that we may have a chance. So as every child in America has access to a good school, as they're educated, we're going to now start fixing things like our economy, which we all care so much about, because we know that employers are looking for educated people to hire. We know that those who are educated can actually secure good jobs and make good money. And now they're not dependent on the government or welfare services. They're not on food stamps. Their anxiety and depression go down significantly. So we know that if you increase education in our country, that you're going to make this a more prosperous country in the land that we all believe in, that can be the greatest country in the world, where every single child, regardless of where they come from, who they are, what their race is, has access to the American dream, a life of prosperity and freedom. That's ultimately what we believe in. And we think that can happen through education reform.
No, I'm sitting here listening to you, right? And you could tell that, one, you're a proud American, right? And what you do for our country is amazing. But what is after ACE? Like, are you getting too political? Like, just by the conversation I'm having with you, I'm like, Norton could probably run for something, man. I'm for Norton all day. What is your stance on it? Would you love to stay where you're at in the nonprofit? Or would you like to get into politics?
You know, my dad used to always say, Norton, you'll be good when you're in your sweet spot. And I feel like right now I'm in my sweet spot because I get to work with remarkable people who have resources to actually invest in our program and change our country. And so if I get to work with great people who are making a difference and I see kids doing well, life is really good for me. And by the way, this is a long-term battle. This is not a war that's going to end anytime soon. Education reform will always continue. And just when we pass legislation, 4 of our states, we have either tax credit programs or education savings accounts. You're always being attacked. So you're always having to put that shield up, recognizing the arrows are coming after you because people still seek to hurt you, even when you're doing good. So thanks for saying that. I really hope that someday things are perfect in our country and we have utopia and we don't have to worry about this crazy issue anymore because every American has it. But in the meantime, we're going to keep fighting for all Americans right now.
I love it. You know, one thing I actually told another leader, he was wanting to always be a politician. And he realized, and that's what his dream was, politician. Since middle school, high school, went to school to do it, and then realized that the nonprofit spectrum was actually by far more helpful than taking a government seat, right? Like I used to think I wanted to be a commissioner to my county until I realized how nasty it really gets. But I also realized that I can make a bigger impact at a nonprofit level, right? At the end of the day, we're still an extension to the government. So there's a little bit there, right? But you don't have this leash on you on what you can and can't do. And I think that's the beautiful spot, and the people that you can touch, and like you could really blow up the organization. So I actually asked that because where is the organization? Is this something that is only based in certain areas? Is this something that people can actually look at across the country? How can people get involved in what you're doing and maybe get some of these grants?
Well, to your question about politics as well, I think some people are gifted to be in politics. I don't know if I would be. I don't know if I've got the ability to compromise. I think you have to work across the table, and I would think of myself as a guy who could do that. But it's nasty business being in politics. Yeah. And so I really admire those who are in politics. And I just don't know if I have the patience to do that. But here's what I would say to your question, though, and I think that goes into politics too, is that around the country, we need people who care about education to actually try and be elected for your local school boards. Local school boards have a lot of power in the impact, the curriculum, and the kind of education that your kid in your district will have. So if you care about kids, if you care about school choice, whether it's a public school or a private school, charter schools, I would encourage you right now to get involved in politics as a school board member, support your politicians who believe in these things, and support organizations like ACE who are on the front lines. We're not a political organization per se. We put our money into privately funded scholarships, but we also to invest heavily in policy work, and that is trying to pass meaningful school choice programs. And then, like I mentioned earlier, do all we can to protect these programs that have been passed. So if you're a person hearing this podcast and you care about education, go to our website, acescholarships.org. And I promise you'll find a way to get involved. And we don't just say that lightly, because the return on investment you get in this program is nothing short of exceptional. From the money that goes to the kids and our graduation rates, you'll feel really good about what you're investing in.
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the podcast, we first want to say thank you. And we also just want to give you a little insight of what we're up to at Francis. Some don't even realize that we're working with organizations to help them use AI to create that real human communication experiences, whether that's actually supporting your families, those patients, or the entire community. We're actually creating tech that connects. Check it out, francis.ai. And I'm sorry I missed it, but this resource is nationwide?
That's right. We're in 12 states. And at a national level, we're joining a force with some other allies to pass a federal school choice bill right now, which means we could be in all 50 states here very soon. But nice. We're in 12 states, and you can see which states we are online. But there's this beautiful coalition of people like ACE around the country that are fighting for kids every single day. And so we're really good at what we do. And there's some others also that are great at what they do as well too. But check us out on the website and you'll see the states we operate in. And that's where our impact is currently.
Love it, man. I love it. And I want to kind of go into, not so much into the politics and Republican, Democrat, but we're in a place now where the school system in general is looking to possibly be changed. Some may say for the better, some may say for the worse. What are your thoughts on ways that, even not just what you are doing at your level, but when we talk about government, what are some ways that we should be enhancing the school systems so that everyone is receiving that opportunity? You know, is it giving it back to the state on figuring out what it actually looks like curriculum wise, or is it at the government level nationwide? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're right. It's a controversial topic. We talk about the Department of Education and our current administration that right now wants to close it. And then you have to say, is that a good idea or a bad idea? And what I would say is that we're not doing a good job at this time. If you look at where we stand as a country currently, some studies show the United States is ranking 40th in the world compared to other countries. And we spend just under $1 trillion on an annual basis. We know kids aren't reading. They're not doing math at levels they need to. So the key thing I would say to people is let's focus on the facts, and then let's see what we can do to improve our education. I think a lot of people believe that education should be very political in nature. And I say, let's take politics out of education It doesn't matter what party you're in. It doesn't matter who you are and where you come from. The key thing is that you deserve to learn. So let's ensure that every kid can read and write and do things at the levels they can so they can be proficient and then have a chance of succeeding in life. If we do that, politics right now gets thrown out of the education system, and that's a win for kids in America. And that's what I always come back to, is this really is not a partisan issue. But sadly, though, we've made this a partisan issue. We've made this about Republicans and Democrats beating each other up. And I hate to see that, because we're talking about kids and Americans right now that they could care less about party affiliation. They just care about going to a school where they're safe and they're being nurtured and they can learn and they can do great things in their lives. So if we can focus more on that and put more power into the hands of states and let them make decisions, I'm all for it. I think that's good for our country.
So good. I really feel like I'm talking to someone that is running for campaign. I'm trying to explain to you something, Norton. Maybe I may be on something here. But no, Norton, for real. When I think you mentioned innovation, you mentioned just technology. Where is ACE, and what is your thoughts on just AI in general in a space of education that it's being implemented more than some may want? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think anytime you advance as a society, it's good for society, and that's a great thing for America. It's a great thing for the world. I think AI is extraordinary. It's helping us right now to do things faster and I think more efficiently as well. So I think AI technology is awesome. We as an organization are investing very heavily in a lot of technology that will enable us to work with our families better. So when they apply to our program, or if they're in an education savings account, that we can actually manage their expenses more effectively and efficiently as well. So technology is, I think, the key to a better future for our children and for America. So we're investing heavily as we believe in that. Now, I will say too, when it comes to education, sometimes just getting back to the basics is not a bad thing. We see a lot of schools that are classically educating their kids, and they're going back to an old school way of teach them how to read and to write. And we're having incredible success, and they're actually taking technology out of the classroom. So I think that could be really good for a lot of kids. Yet at the same time, I also come back to, I see schools that are utilizing technology, and it's working out really well. For our kids, when we educated them, we put them in a classical school. They had no technology there, and they're doing really good things. They know how to speak well. They can write really well. And now they're in college doing awesome things. So I think the key thing, once again, it comes down to you as a parent, what you believe is right for your kid. If you have a kid who's musically inclined, or a kid who would be incredible in theater, or a kid who could be an engineer, get that kid into a place where they're being challenged and they are able to pursue their dreams. That's really what it comes down to.
And you mentioned that you guys as an organization are kind of investing into that AI world. Mm-hmm. What does AI look like for Norton and ACE Foundation? Like, what would you want it to see? You're talking about communication with families. Yeah. What more? If you can have this 24/7 AI bot, let's say, that really helps out as a tool, because people think that it's a replacement. It is not a replacement. It is a tool. What does that look like for ACE Scholarship?
Well, here's an example in the country right now that's a big opportunity for education and AI is these education savings accounts allow parents in certain states to use their money for homeschool, for tutoring, or for private school. So they have a lot of flexibility as to how they can use that money. These are state-funded programs, and so the states want to ensure that they're being good stewards of that money and that they're managing those expenses appropriately. So what technology will enable us to do is that if we're working with a homeschool family and they've got multiple expenses, whether it's pencils or paper or staples or buying a computer, we need to ensure that every single expense is being used for education. And our computer platform and technology will enable us to do exactly that very efficiently. That's just one example. Another one at a federal level is currently our Congress is looking at passing a federal tax credit bill. Same thing, if that passes, we're going to have a lot of work to do to ensure that we manage those expenses so that we're being good stewards of that money. So technology is really coming into play. And I go back to those old school days where we used Excel spreadsheets and we had paper and pencils. And thank God we've got technology that now allows us to approve things much faster and more effectively.
I love that, man. This is so good. Yeah, I think AI, when it comes to organizations, man, I've realized that people, leaders are really afraid. They're really on two sides of it. I don't know if we see too many people in the middle, but they're very fearful of what's going to happen if they implement AI and what that actually looks like. But then you have those that are just very excited and say, man, give me AI because I can see how it long term is going to benefit the organization, whether that's communication through SMS tools, whether it's just creating a relationship with your community, right? I think that's the biggest thing when we think about, especially in the nonprofits, those that do fundraising, those that want to stay relevant, because it's kind of that out of sight, out of mind. How do we continue to have the conversations repeatedly without ever forcing someone to donate or forcing someone to volunteer, but just keeping that contact? I think there's so many unique spaces that AI is really bringing value to. But I'm excited. I'm excited what you're doing with ACEs as well, man. And it looks like you guys are kind of on board with what's happening. So I have a unique little section that I want to test out here today with you. And this is just kind of, I wouldn't really say hard questions, but they're questions I don't normally ask.
Okay.
Are you ready for it, Norton?
I'm not sure if I am. Can you send me the questions first and then I'll let you know?
It's a quick fire fun, man. It's a quick fire fun.
Record button off here.
Yeah, we got to definitely, let's go ahead and pause it and just make sure that we're good for this. Now, man, this one is really good. So do you think it's harder to either raise funds or awareness?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think they're both very tough. And you know what? Funds were difficult to raise, and I think that's what most people would say. But I actually would say awareness is even harder, because if you generate awareness from the right people, the funds will follow. And speaking about the future and using technology, we're really looking to figure out how we can scale at a greater level nationally. And it all starts with awareness. So, you know what? I'm going to say awareness.
I like that one. No, I do agree. I think there's always that story that you gotta tell, right? And that's the awareness part of it. And then you mentioned the funds will come. We're storytellers. It's almost like in the nonprofit space, we are storytellers, and people buy into the stories. We make them aware by these stories that you mentioned earlier. What's one city that surprised you with the hunger for better education?
I'm going to say New Orleans. So Louisiana is one of our proud states, and we got a call about 10 years ago from some people there, and they just passed a state tax credit program, and it was on the heels of Katrina. And what we've seen in New Orleans is that they've totally revamped their education system. They absolutely did a 180 from where they were.
Wow.
And I hate to say this, but yeah, that disaster really helped them to start from square one once again and think about what they wanted for their kids. And what we've seen in New Orleans are very hungry parents and kids who want the best for their community. And we love working in Louisiana because you got people that are doers there, and the need still continues to be great. Sadly, poverty is still extraordinarily high. And so our efforts and the work we do there is very significant. But I could say that about every city. That would just be one of many cities we operate in, because that one stands out given what they went through with Katrina.
Okay. And how about if ACE scholarships or a song title, what would it be?
We're changing lives. We are changing lives. We are a program that's a catalyst to a greater future. With an ACE scholarship, your future can be very bright. So I guess you could use a lot of those names right there, but to me, the key thing is impact. We are truly having an impact.
Good, man. Listen, easy question. That's the only question I had. It was kind of off, but it just allowed you to really think, have a little fun as well before we get wrapping up here. For those that want to know more about Norton, whether it's you personally, is there a LinkedIn that they can follow? If people want to know about the organization, what social media handles do you have? What is the website? I know you mentioned it a little earlier, but let's kind of give them a place to go to for them to find out more.
Yeah, I think a great resource, once again, is our website at acescholarships.org. It's rich with information. It gives you information on the states we operate in, our contact information if you need some additional information there. And that's a great place you can go. But again, my encouragement to anyone who listens to this show today is, I know that everyone cares about education. My encouragement would be, get involved and make a difference. Whether you're supporting ACE, whether you're running for a school board election, whether you're supporting a candidate who believes in education, when you ask candidates questions, make sure it comes down to, do they really care about kids, and are they doing something to help them out? Or are they focusing on protecting the status quo? Because too many Americans are protecting the status quo, and that's not a good future for America. So get involved and make a difference.
I love it, man. And I got a question. We're about to get to the blind question, which is another fun part, but I'm a big believer that in our lives, we find these mentors, we find these coaches, whether it's a family member that truly allow us to see things that maybe we didn't see in ourselves, right? Was there a personal mentor or moment like that lit fire under you that allowed you to be Norton, who you are today, kind of, as you said, in the sweet spot?
Yeah, that's easy. That's my dad. My dad was a remarkable man. I lost him a couple of years ago to Alzheimer's way too early. But my dad would write me personal notes every morning. He would
Wow.
encourage me. He believed in me. I had some learning disabilities growing up, and my dad would always be there every step of the way to encourage me. And I would not be the person I am today without my dad. And I think in a way that probably is my personal passion too at ACE is every one of our kids has someone who believes in them, sometimes more than they believe in themselves. And it goes to show the power that when you believe in people and encourage them, they can start believing and doing things that maybe they never thought imaginable before. So my dad, man, he was a rock. Miss that guy, but there's no question he is head and shoulders above all the other great leaders I've interacted with.
So good, man. One, sorry for your loss. But to know that a father, right? I didn't grow up with a father, so I don't have my dad was the guy. But I think we're also in a place where a dad is very important in a child's life. You're talking about scholarships. You're talking about better education. Do you also feel that there's that loss of touch sometimes where people may just not have a father, and that's where we kind of get lost in the shuffle as well? Like you speaking so highly of your father, and some men like myself not having that, right? I was acting out. I didn't know what a father looked like. I didn't know what a man looked like. I was raised single mom, 7 kids. So what are your thoughts on that, man? Before we actually end, I think it's something to just kind of touch on.
Well, I think what I would say is that if you're an A student, you have a great advantage. And there's a reason why you're successful, because someone in your life cares about you. Whether it's a single mom, whether it's 2 parents, whether it's a grandma, or whether it's 2 grandparents, we see that all the time. But the common denominator is that our kids have someone in their lives who care deeply about them. And if you did a deeper analysis, if you look at certain cultures, you're going to see more single fathers or single moms. Mm-hmm. And some cultures, like the Hispanic culture, tend to be more faith-based, and they have a husband and a wife in their families. So they usually have 2 parents there. What I would say is that, man, I'm so lucky. I truly feel lucky to have had amazing parents growing up in a middle-income family where they cared about me. I had access to things in my life, and I know that the opportunities given to me are much greater than others. And as the Bible says, to whom much is given, much is expected. So I take that very seriously, that I've been given a great gift in my life. And for you, I've heard your story from many kids who grew up in families with a single mom and multiple siblings. And I don't know how your siblings are doing, but I think about one of our guest speakers last year, a guy named Steve White, who grew up in a very poor family in Indianapolis, single mom, I think 4 siblings. And he's one of the, I don't want to say one of the only ones, but he went on to great things to actually run Xfinity in the Western United States. Wow. And he told that story that my mom cared about me. And he went to a public school, but he said, my mom cared about me. She made me do my homework and do my reading. So honestly, at the end of the day, having that caring person in your life is so critical. When you go to the right school, you're adding more people who care about you because they're saying, we believe in you. I think that's what it boils down to.
So good, man. I can keep having this conversation with you for the rest of the day if we had the time. I'm going to go ahead and just end with a blind question, man. So this is no prep for this, as we did a little earlier, but if I give you a billboard in the middle of Times Square, you can put one sentence on it to speak to every kid and every parent out there. What does it say?
Education changes everything. That's our tagline this year, and I believe in that. Education changes everything, not just the kid and their education, but all the other social ills in our country. If Americans start paying attention to that, we'll have a great country and we'll be much better than we are today. Education changes everything.
Norton, I appreciate it. That's so good. I knew it was going to be easy for you. You said that with no hesitation. Clearly, you guys are living it. What is that blind question for the next leader that we have here on the Hart Hustle Podcast?
What would I ask another person?
Yep.
Gosh.
A blind question. You don't know this leader. They're in the healthcare space. They're in the nonprofit space. What is one thing you want to catch them off guard with?
I think you just come back to, just being caught off guard here on this one here. It's something along the lines of, what difference are you going to make tomorrow? Going back to your question about technology in the future, It's one thing to have success gained to this point, but what are you going to do to be better tomorrow and make the lives of other people better as well? I mean, that might be a question you ask.
I love it. Well, Norton, thank you so much for your time here, for just enlightening us on what a scholarship is actually doing for our country. And I think at some point, I can see this, Norton, becoming even bigger. You talk about 12 states. I do feel that you'll get in all 50 states. I mean, there's a passion that you're just so excited. You wake up every day. I can tell. It's how you mentioned it. How can I be better, right? How can I empower? How can I impact every single day? Just taking it the bar on another level. And it's not doing it for you per se either, right? You're doing it for those that follow you. You're literally creating a legacy without knowing you're probably creating a legacy. But what I've realized as a parent, as an adult, is that the life that we're doing now and all the work is not for us. There's somebody, you mentioned, those kids that are going to benefit off of it. You know, when I went and became part of my old high school, I had no kids, but I knew who I was and I knew everything I was going through in my life. And how do I become a better version of myself so that kids that were just like me can see someone live that life that they're living? I'm a big believer that at some point you have to take your pencil and write your story. It is okay that someone is writing these chapters in, but that's not forever. So when I hear what you're doing, Norton, the educational part of life, giving someone the opportunity to know that they matter, that they can do more with more resources. One of the biggest things my mom told me is I did the best with what I knew. But what if we teach our kids that they actually have so much more, right?
Well,
So thank you so much, Norton, for this. We can keep on going. If you guys are still watching this, make sure that you guys are really staying with what Norton is doing. Follow him on LinkedIn. Follow these websites, because this is something that is so greater than just me and him. This is about what is happening for our future students here in America. Guys, thank you guys so much for watching the Hart Hustle Podcast. My name's Ephraim. This is another great leader at Norton. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Laters.
thank you.